emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus.
You have accessed entry 1317.LA0312, certificate number 33486, the Tootsie Pop Indian.
How many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop? The world may never know.
Now, I should say right from the get-go that there's a lot of writing on this topic online, and recent writing has gone to great pains to describe the Tootsie Pop character as the Tootsie Pop Native American.
Yeah, the TPNA.
But I think it's clear when you look at the wrapper that the picture is not depicting an actual Native American, but rather a boy, a young, mid-century suburban child wearing his approximation of an Indian chief costume with a toy bow and arrow. A toy bow and arrow.
Toy boat?
A toy boat and arrow.
I don't know if I had ever noticed that it wasn't an actual proud native chief. It's just a dumb kid dressed up.
It's a dumb kid dressed up, and in fact, all of the...
Oh, it is. You can tell by just how the headdress goes down to the...
Yeah.
Halfway down its back.
Yeah. So it's kind of... It's emblematic of our time that so much of the recent writing describes this little person as a Native American rather than as an Indian.
Right. The idea that you can solve centuries-long social problems with a quick word find and replace.
Right. And the AP Style Guide now has just recently changed its what is it? Its prescription.
Yeah.
That we no longer say Indian. We can say American Indian.
American Indian and Native American are both okay, according to the Associated Press. And until this year, in subsequent mentions, you could just say, local Indian authorities or whatever. But now you should say local Native American authorities or local American Indian authorities.
And if you're in Canada, you would say First Nations.
Of course. We always hear from Canadians every time we say Indian or Eskimo, and we love that. Keep doing that.
And we don't say Eskimo at all. That now is I don't think the AP uses that word.
No,
anymore.
I think we have said it in historical contexts.
Yes.
Or maybe Eskimo pie.
But in the case of the Tootsie Roll wrapper, and I don't mean the rapper Tootsie Roll. I mean
love that guy.
The Tootsie Pop wrapper rather. I'm going to make a point of order, or I'm going to say, for the purposes of this show, that every character appearing in the repeating set of drawings that are on a Tootsie Roll wrapper, they're all children, and in most cases, young children.
Yeah, these are like the kids on the what's the iconic sports folder?
Yeah, they're Peachies.
Peachies, yeah.
Except they're 5-year-olds.
These are before they have gotten onto the junior varsity cross country team. These are to me, it's canon that these are the same kids as on Peachy folders.
Right.
But they're younger and they're on.
And there's
grape lollipop wrappers.
To describe some of them, there's a kid with a pair of overalls on and a fishing pole. There are 2 kids on a tricycle, a couple of kids in a toy boat, a kid on a bicycle, 2 kids playing marbles I mean, a lot of these are sports.
There's some roller skating. Do they ever change these?
Well, they do because
there's some baseball.
There are kids on skateboards, which seem like somewhat of a modern addition.
The Tootsie Roll, I'm sure you're going to get to this, but the Tootsie Pop goes back to what, the 30s, right?
Well, the Tootsie Pop, yes, goes back to the 30s. The Tootsie Roll actually goes all the way back to the early part of the century.
Yeah, William McKinley loved Tootsie Rolls.
Yeah.
He's always eating them. He died with a Tootsie Roll in his mouth.
But so for the purposes of this show, when we say Tootsie Pop Indian, we're referring to
a costume.
The costume, the child dressed as a Tootsie Pop.
And let's just say that the costume is even more problematic in a way. Today, you would not want to see your white 5-year-old wearing an Indian headdress because this is not the equivalent of buckskins. That's ceremonial gear. That's like it's not just appropriating somebody's look. It's actually a religious symbol. He's
got buckskin pants. He's got a bow and arrow that he bought at the Piggly Wiggly.
He shouldn't be wearing the headdress, John. Don't. Stop apologizing for this awful child.
But this rapper goes way back. So it is it's a historic document.
You think he should get grandfathered in?
Well, but also the races of the children are not clear, but they're all pursuing sort of Norman Rockwellian childhood games.
When's the last time you saw kids playing marbles?
Or I mean, there's an actual soapbox derby happening here, which I think is also great. Not a thing you see a lot.
When I was a child in the 1970s, my pillow of my sheet and pillow set at night was of Ernie and Bert and maybe some other Sesame Street gang in a soapbox derby, a crate racer, milk crate racer, speeding down a hill, and I did not know what it was, but I wanted to build that.
Yes.
Like if Bert and Ernie can they don't even have legs. If Bert and Ernie can build that, certainly I could build one of those out of crates, and I never did.
There are 3 kids around a maypole here. I mean,
well, this is getting pagan. Do you have the special Midsommar Tootsie Roll?
Wait, there's actually a girl with a hoop and stick.
You're going back in time as you read it.
This is impressive.
I see a kid dying of diphtheria. I'm looking at the kids on skateboards right now, and one of them seems too young to be on a skateboard.
Well, that's the thing.
The little girl at right, I'm okay with skateboarding, but this looks like her 18-month-old brother in a diaper is on the other skateboard.
Start him young. That's the whole principle of
Tony
skateboarding.
Hawk did, and
that's right.
Look what happened to him.
I actually did try to build a soapbox car, and I found the wheels. I found a set of wheels from an old wheelbarrow and so forth, but I could not figure out how to make an axle that turned. Right, I didn't have.
If you turn the wheel,
I didn't have whatever material that was, and my father wasn't especially handy. And
rack and pinion steering is not easy to reverse engineer for a 9-year-old or whatever.
9-year-old. So I built a soapbox car, but it couldn't turn. And you could lean turn, but it was basically like a crash mobile, and it kept going down into the gutter and crashing into the culvert. And eventually, I abandoned it as a, and I really wanted one too. I wanted a little plywood car so badly, but I just didn't have any adult role models to help me out.
Well, Ernie and Bert ended up crashing into a culvert too. That's how they died.
That's the thing.
They died together just like they wanted.
But where are the kids playing Frisbee? I mean, where are the kids smoking pot behind the high school? Where
are the kids playing Fortnite? Where are the kids flossing? I don't like this Tootsie Pop wrapper. It makes me feel old.
Well, but the Tootsie Pop wrapper does evoke memories for you, I'm guessing.
Oh, absolutely.
Childhood memories.
Halloween disappointment. I'm not a Tootsie Pop guy.
Oh, is that right? So when you opened your Halloween bag and found a Tootsie Pop, that was in the category of boo.
I kind of have this immediate Halloween candy reaction where it's either chocolate or not. And anything, even the worst chocolate is kind of better than what is the best non-chocolate Halloween treat? Bit of honey.
No, only if you're 85. There are no good non-chocolate Halloween candies.
Some people like Starburst, and I don't dislike Starburst, but I'm not oh boy, howdy, a Jolly Rancher.
A Starburst is definitely in the category of disappointing Halloween candy. Even an entire roll of Starburst, I would trade for a single Reese's peanut butter cup.
Tootsie Pops are...
but I like Tootsie Pops.
Well, and the thing about... I mentioned chocolate because the whole Tootsie line is a confusing, modern kind of a laboratory invention where... If I'm right about this, the center of a Tootsie Pop
Is a Tootsie Roll.
It's made of this. It's not the shape of a Tootsie Roll, but it's made of Tootsium.
It is
the rare chemical element.
Yeah. Do you think of Tootsie Rolls as chocolate?
See, that's the thing.
Right.
They're the color of chocolate.
Yes.
And they appear, I believe, don't they have some kind of chocolatey taste?
They do. They have cocoa in them.
But the fact that it's, when you put it in your mouth, you
Doesn't
immediately
melt.
realize, oh, this is some kind of laboratory taffy.
It's a cross between a chocolate, a taffy, and and three other unholy things that you would put in your mouth.
It's caramelish.
Caramel, right.
I guess here's the funny thing. If I went to some snooty New American small plate Seattle restaurant, and among their $20 desserts, they brought me some chocolate caramels.
Right.
I would be like, ooh, a chocolate caramel.
Wrapped in wax paper.
Yes, and some salt sprinkled on it. I would be like, what a delightful treat, a chocolate caramel.
Yes.
But that's exactly what Tootsie Rolls are, and John, they're not good.
Well, so...
Do you like them?
Yeah, Tootsie Rolls... I have a soft spot for Tootsie Rolls, and Tootsie Rolls are a soft spot already.
They're the softest spot in the middle of a Tootsie Pop, for sure.
I like a Tootsie Roll. I feel like it's old people candy, just like any caramel. When I was...
it's like those Brock's wrapped...
or Werther's.
Well, Werther's does the hard candies, but do you remember Brock's has the sort of squishy ones that they have a weird pink and white color?
No, I don't like those. That was like saltwater taffy, basically, but in a little...
I'm sure they're chemically stabilized in some way, just like Tootsium is.
Well, Tootsie Rolls themselves were invented around 1907 by a man named Leo Hirschfeld.
1907, you said?
1907.
So William McKinley could not have enjoyed them.
He could not have enjoyed them. These post-date William McKinley's presidency.
Sad.
But they are, kind of a classic American New York story. Leo emigrated to the U.S. and got a job working at the Stern and Sahlberg Candy Company, and was just kind of like...
That's what all companies were named. Stern and Sahlberg. Do we like better than companies as opposed to today when companies are just named Confabco or whatever?
Right. Arnx with two Y's.
With an umlaut?
Stern and Sahlberg was, it was a New York or like a Manhattan candy maker.
And let me just say, it wasn't the branding didn't exist yet. This was like the best thing they could think of.
This was great.
Mr. Stern.
And Mr. Sahlberg.
Their butterscotch confections are delicious.
And their little licorice fobs.
Guess what? They've come together.
And this was a time, and until not very long ago, this was true in New York, right? The candy stores were on not every corner, but a candy store was a kind of store. My dad used to go to the candy store here in Seattle and get, little penny candies out of a jar.
Gathering place, it was where children spent all their disposable income.
Right. Every penny you got for doing a good deed.
Because you could spend a penny.
You went down to the candy store.
You get a handful of licorice.
Or a nickel for that matter.
Oh man, think what you could get for a nickel.
There's
still one candy store in Ballard, by the way, and it's a throwback.
Is that right?
Yeah, kind of a candy. 10 minutes from my house, there's a candy store. But the thing is, to your point on the previous entry about the past being exactly the same, like every kid I see in there is just delighted to be in a candy store. Like we think that kids are different and now they just want to do Fortnite dances.
Right.
But really, if there were delightful candy stores run by an old man in an apron, the kids would love it.
That's the problem. All the candy stores have turned into cell phone stores now, and the kids are like walking around in a state of perpetual disappointment.
And that's a rent issue. Yeah. Capitalism has let the customer down, not the other way around.
The first place I ever played in New York was over in Brooklyn at a place called Pete's Candy Store, which used to be a candy store and now is a dumb hipster bar like every other one.
Do they still sell candy in some way? Is there even a nod, a token attempt?
No, I mean, unless you consider booze candy.
Huh. Yeah, I guess I don't, but you used to.
You avoid it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Like you would candy. We both do.
Yeah, that's true.
So Leo had this great idea of the Tootsie Roll, which is basically, as we were saying,
what's his idea? What does he come into the board meeting and saying? It looks like a rabbit turd.
It's got it's sugar and corn syrup and some cocoa and some other material.
They've got 8 things in vats at
Yep.
Stern and Sahlberg, and he has just mixed them all together.
And
He finds it
It's
fun.
extruded. I mean, when you watch the manufacturing process and you see the
Ooh, I
initial extrusion.
Walk me through this. What's going on
Well,
here?
they make this big kind of toffee stuff in a pot, and
Big
then
beaters stirring it in a big vat.
yep, and then it comes out of an extruder, and it's a log the size of like a fireplace log, but it looks like a Tootsie Roll. And it's astonishing. Like when you see one, it's
Wait,
like
why do they make a giant Tootsie Roll and then carve it up into 10,000
well
little Tootsie Rolls?
because they spit it out as this big log, and then it goes through a process of winnowing, right? Or they stretch it.
I see. It's
through
like taffy.
various conveyor belts until it's a little that's right, until it becomes a little very long thin Tootsie Roll. But when you see a giant Tootsie Roll come out of the machine for the first time, it's like
Is it watching a baby being born?
Well, it is a little bit, but it's also like imagining that your cat is 6 feet tall. It
right.
like changes your perception in maybe not a good way.
Did I just shrink?
You're like, oh no, I don't want a Tootsie Roll that big.
So I've never tried like hallucinogenics or anything, but maybe I should just go watch a giant Tootsie Roll be born.
I think it would freak you out.
See if it freaks me out.
But I don't know if it would, the positive side of hallucinogenics is that it gives you a new outlook, man. I mean, it really changes the way you think about like everything. I don't think a giant Tootsie Roll is going to do that unless you took it as a challenge.
To write great art about this moment?
No, I'm thinking more if someone put like a 25-pound Tootsie Roll in front of you and said, go for it. Like you have to eat this Tootsie
Like it's
Roll.
it's one of those trucker steak places where like your meal's free if you can eat the ribeye in 20 minutes.
If you tried to eat a 25-pound Tootsie Roll, I think you'd come out the other side with a whole new outlook.
Imagine a guy eating a big, like the size of a baked ham Tootsie Roll with a knife and fork. Just like his tongue is sticking out the corner of his mouth as he's about to dig in. Now imagine it's Donald Trump about to dig into this giant Tootsie Roll.
I'm looking forward to the fan art about this. But the Tootsie Roll, it was a hit, and it sort of
is it exactly what we appear? Because it looks old timey today. So I assume back then it was the same dark brown and red wrapper and a little cylinder of brown goo.
Yeah, it was. It was. You can look at old like advertisements around World War I, where the Tootsie Roll was sort of posited as something that we would give our boys, our victorious boys coming home from the war. Like, let's reward them with the best thing we can think of, which is a Tootsie Roll.
Good job. You've defeated the Spanish, or you've won World War I. Here's a Tootsie Roll.
Yeah, it was a popular candy, a big hit.
They're like, we're going to go back to one of the countries that has full-size candy bars. We're not coming here anymore.
In 1917, Stern and Sahlberg became the Sweets Company of America. Stern and Sahlberg, I think, both wanted out of the sweets game by that point. They'd been in it for a long time. The company changed its name to the Sweets Company, and Leo Hirschfeld kind of got in the reorganization. He felt like he didn't get the compensation package as the genius candy maker that he imagined himself to be. So he quit Sweets and Company and started his own company called Mel's Candy.
Even though his name is Leo.
His name was Leo.
He just loved the sitcom Alice, and he wanted to run a company called Mel's.
All this predates Alice. It postdates McKinley, predates Alice. It's in that weird time period.
What do we even call that?
But unfortunately, Mel's Candy failed, and Leo Hirschfeld committed suicide in 1922.
Well, that's not funny.
And that is the end of today's episode.
Futurelings.
But no, so Leo's out of the picture, but the Sweets Company soldiers on and continues to to expand their line of sweets, but Tootsie Rolls being still a big part of their game. But then the Great Depression comes, and sweets, like all nice things, the Sweets Company falls on hard times.
The sweets desiccate and blow away in a harsh Oklahoma wind.
That's right.
The kids don't have disposable income anymore.
That penny could go to buy a moldy potato.
Depression must have been rough on confectioners.
As it was on stockbrokers.
Yeah, confectioners jumping out windows, but they were all safe because they landed in giant marshmallows.
Well, no. Have you ever landed on a 500-pound Tootsie Roll? It hurts.
Impaled on candy
they
canes.
Are not soft. And an interesting little twist in the story of the Sweets Company, although it was it had gone public. It was a viable concern, but as they started to experience financial difficulty and the company seemed like it was kind of failing on the ropes, the company that made the boxes and wrappers for the Tootsie Company, a company called the Paper Box Company.
That's a name that could be real today. That could just be some boutique that sells
it wasn't called
overpriced
that.
Stationery.
It was called the Joseph Rubin and Sons Box Company.
Exactly. Respectable Jewish fella makes good boxes. We'll name it after him.
And the Rubin family and their boxes, they recognized that the Sweets Company of America was one of their best clients for buying their stuff. It was the company was failing, and they were afraid that they were going to lose a major contract, and so they bought the Sweets Company of America in order to save the client for their boxes.
Talk about what is it? That's not even putting the cart before the horse or throwing out the baby with the bathwater. This should be its own expression. Saving Tootsie Rolls to save boxes.
Right, buy the candy company to save the box company.
I guess, but I mean, that's just again, it's a problem of capitalism.
Well,
some candy nobody likes, propping up some boxes nobody wants. They wouldn't have the terrible candy in them.
The great thing about, and this is a great Depression era anecdote. The son of Joseph Rubin, one of the sons, Bernard Rubin,
probably Baruch, but okay,
Baruch. Rubin.
I'm sure he was called Bernard down at the exchange.
Bernie Rubin. He actually went independently, looked up all the major shareholders of Sweets Company of America and contacted them independently and bought their shares.
Whoa.
So it wasn't like a corporate takeover. He just went around and rang doorbells and said, "You've got, 100,000 shares in American Sweets. I'll give you $5 a share." And they were like, "Sure."
But that is a corporate takeover.
It's great,
right?
Like
if you saw somebody doing that in a movie, you'd be like, "Hey, this guy's buying out the whole valley. He's got a plan."
Right. He did have a plan. And eventually the Rubin family gained control of Sweets Company of America. And it was sort of right before this 1935 takeover. It was 1931, I guess, that an employee of Sweets Company named Brandon Perry invented the Tootsie Pop.
Brandon Perry. That's a modern name. He's a time traveler.
Brandon Perry.
Brandon Perry had eaten Tootsie Pops as a kid, traveled back to the 30s, and invented them.
He was a lesser-known character on 90210.
Oh yeah, he's a 90210 chimera. He's got both kinds of sideburns.
But the Tootsie Pop was, I guess, something that had eluded candy makers for a long time, which was a hard candy pop with a chewy center.
So this is not just his idea, like, hey, we got lollipops, we got goop, let's put them together. Like, people had been trying to put cores in lollipops.
It seems like it...
And failing.
Reading the literature of the time, it seems like it was a major accomplishment. How do you do it? I mean, tell me, Ken, how do you put a chewy center inside of a hard candy shell?
I mean, the first thing I would do is I would take the lollipop and then I'd coat it with the stuff, but then I realized, I've just done it backwards.
Right.
I put the goop on the outside.
The goop on the outside.
I understand the impulse because a lollipop is a candy that lasts a little too long.
Right.
Right? You're licking, it's still the same. When you get to the end, it's anticlimactic because you got that fuzzy stick you don't like.
You're just sort of like, bleh.
You're left with the fuzzy end of the lollipop, as Billy Wilder would say. So you can see that the dramatic arc of a lollipop is not right.
That's right.
Something should be happening at the beginning of the third act.
And you do see lollipops that have multiple layers, right? So the inside is some kind of sour lollipop and the outside is sweet.
We have those today.
Yeah.
Would they have had those? I guess they have the concentric circle, so at least you're getting down to different... If you're a giant child if you're a little child in a sailor suit holding a giant lollipop, they do have the kind with the concentric colors.
Yeah, because if you're making a lollipop by dipping it successipop in layers of hard candy or sugar or whatever, and it hardens, you can make a lollipop with 1,000, or what are they called? Sour pop.
But getting the lollipop goop the sugar to crystallize around a soft thing had baffled scientists.
And what they do, the way they make it, is they, again, extrude Tootsie Roll into its long extrusion.
A giant vat takes a poop.
And then they make candy, which is, just just regular hard candy is basically just sugar and water, and hot. And they make a bed of candy. They roll the candy around the Tootsie Pop, so you have around the Tootsie Roll, so you have a long extrusion now of. It's basically like a tube, like a loaf, like a Yule log.
That's what I want. I want to go to the secondhand store at the factory and get a bunch of Tootsie loaves.
And as while it's still warm, somehow they do this magical process where they cut it and roll it, and it becomes this iconic sort of Saturnalia of candy and pop, candy and toots.
Yeah, and what a Saturnalia it is. So they must crinkle in some way.
Yeah.
The hard stuff is still pliable enough that it'll fold around the edges. But what about the stick, John? Where do you get the stick?
Well, then you just push the stick in there while you still have a chance. It's got to be a pretty narrow window, but that's the great thing about industrialization.
No, it's just two stressed out Lucy and Ethel types on the conveyor belt trying to get all this done. No, you're right. Today, there's probably not a worker in the whole building.
Hausenfevel Incorporated.
They killed all the Oompa Loompas, and now it's just 3 levers doing the whole thing.
Did I mention that Leo Hirschfield named the Tootsie Roll after his daughter Clara? It bears mentioning. He had a little girl named Clara, and her nickname was Tootsie, as was the style of the time, and he named the candy after his daughter.
So our term of endearment, old timey, newspaper reporters or cab drivers calling somebody Toots. Hey, Toots. That was already a term of endearment.
Yep.
Tootsie Wootsie.
Little Tootsie. Isn't Tootsie Dagwood's wife? His wife is Tootsie.
His wife is Blondie. Tootsie's his daughter.
Oh, sorry. Tootsie is his daughter. Right,
maybe he does have some weird purity culture obsession with Tootsie because she's very attractive.
And I think Blondie and Dagwood started about this same time too, didn't they? That cartoon dates all the way back.
No, the daughter is Cookie.
Oh, Cookie, right. And
They're all delicious.
The cartoon is called Blondie. What am I talking about?
Tootsie's the neighbor.
Oh.
Tootsie's the brunette lookalike of Blondie.
Right.
So Dagwood has this woman next door who looks like his wife but is a brunette.
Yes.
And she's married to this cuck called Herb.
Yeah, Herb's a dummy.
So really, I'm sure...
Herb's got a virile mustache, though.
This is probably some John Cheever, John Updike neighborhood where Dagwood is just plowing through the local... assortment.
I have to say, as someone who preferred Betty to Veronica, I absolutely preferred Tootsie to Blondie. But it's maybe because familiarity breeds contempt. Like, I see Blondie every day, whereas Tootsie is kind of... Well,
are you 95?
As a newspaper reader, still.
As I finish the junior jumble and my eyes drift downward... The strip is called Blondie, even though Dagwood is the protagonist, because it started out as the original gimmick was that Dagwood was the scion of some family of millionaire tycoons.
Right. He's a loafer, right?
Yeah, but he's wealthy. He comes from money. Yeah, he's a Gatsby type, and he marries a flapper and is disowned by his wealthy family.
Oh,
so she's the showgirl who leads him down the path to ruin, but instead they just start up a normal suburban life.
It's the Duke of Windsor story.
Right. And it's exactly the Duke, and it predates really the American suburban story. So they come at the American 20th century story of, boring suburban lawnmower life through this weird channel of having money, losing it all on a drunken weekend.
Right.
And then discovering Levittown, basically.
Yeah. Good for them.
I don't know why I'm talking about it to such a degree, but I really thought the future should know the secret origin of Dagwood Bumstead. And when he eats those big sandwiches, he's like, I used to be able to afford, Cook used to make these for me as a child, but now I have to do it myself in the middle of the night. So,
although that all happened before the invention of the sandwich, let's be honest.
What do you think the origin of Tootsie is as a term of endearment? Is there another word that is it Yiddish?
Anything that you put an IE at the end becomes a diminutive, basically in any sort of German language, right? Itsy, bitsy, mitzi.
Mitzi to me sounds slightly Jewish. Is it possible that Tootsie comes from some...
That this is a Yiddishism rather than a Germanism? Wait. In Italian, every like an I at the end diminutizes
Sure,
words,
and in
doesn't it?
German as well, right? There's
Yeah.
German women named Fritzi and
Yeah.
Schlotsky.
Schlitzy.
Yeah. If you're a German in the 20s, your girlfriend sounds like a deli, basically. I guess it just comes from, I guess the Oxford English Dictionary says it just comes from tootsie, wootsy, wootsy. So it's just onomatopoetic. It's the sound of baby talk turning into a word. And I don't know if tootsies because we say toes are tootsies, right?
I mean, we don't in my family, but you may in yours.
Really? You don't?
Oh, I guess yeah.
Your little tootsie
counts your tootsies.
I mean, I don't. When my wife gets a manicure, I don't say, "Oh, did you paint your widow tootsies?" But I feel like I'm aware in baby talk.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're semi-fluent in baby talk.
In as far back as the 1850s and 60s, the feet of ladies and children were called tootsies, and in fact, it seems to come from footsie tootsie. So it's maybe a portmanteau of toe and foot.
Oh, I see. So it's not related to the Hutus and the Tutsis.
No, like you'd think it would be all about genocide,
right.
But in fact, it's not.
It's the one thing on this show that isn't about genocide.
I wonder if that's one of the reasons why. We say the Clinton administration didn't take the Rwanda genocide seriously because of the problems in the Balkans.
Well, right.
And Somalia. And,
right,
Somalia. And the helicopter in Somalia, right.
But maybe you think it's just that he thought it was just like a little footy.
The name sounds
too cute.
Too cute to take seriously.
Hutus and Tutsis.
Hutus and Tutsis. Yeah, of course, there's nothing funny at all about it, but I'm just saying why President Clinton was misled.
Right. Well, we should do a whole episode on why President Clinton was misled.
Entry, blah, blah, blah. Why President Clinton was misled. Okay, so we understand that Tootsie's becomes a pet name for his daughter, Clara.
Right.
And he applies it to the candy because Clara Roll sounds weird.
Well, and that's right. And then it becomes, and Clara Pop. Actually, Clara Pop I'd
drink Clara Pop.
Yeah, so would I. A funny thing about the way they make Tootsie Rolls is that in the original instructions on making Tootsie Rolls, it includes the idea that at the end of the production day, whatever Tootsie Roll is left is then blended into the Tootsie Rolls that they're making the following day. So you take the old log and you stick it back in the machine.
Like a tenth of it, or whatever is left.
Yeah, and integrate it into the new log. And so within the Tootsie Roll company, there is a kind of like a little bit of a story, I guess, I guess it's in the same way that every time you smell a fart, there's a little bit of fecal matter in the air that just went into your nose.
Julius Caesar's last breath.
Right, that there is some little portion of Tootsie Roll from the original batch made by Leo in 1907.
It's like sourdough starter.
Yeah, that's right.
It's still the same.
Still connected to the original Tootsie Roll.
So it would be very dilute at this point, like the molecules of Julius Caesar's last breath. But
particularly in light of the fact that, and I want you to really consider this for a second, they make 64 million Tootsie Rolls a day.
I have a problem with that because who is eating?
Well, a lot of those Tootsie Rolls aren't being eaten. If you look at my daughter's...
Are they insulation?
If you look at my daughter's Halloween basket, which is still on top of the refrigerator and is like 89% Tootsie Rolls.
That would be hilarious if the market was so inelastic here that they're still making 64 million a day and like literally 60 million are just getting thrown away like weeks later.
They're just sitting in paper bags in people's basements.
America is slowly filling.
Nobody wants those
Tootsie Rolls. That's remarkable. There's 300 million people in America. The average American is eating, well, I guess some of these go overseas.
Right.
But let's say half of those are for America. The average American eats a Tootsie Roll every 10 days?
I guess.
I don't.
There are 20
For
million.
every one person like me, there's somebody else eating one every 5 days.
64 million Tootsie Rolls. I mean, all you have to do is sit down and eat 10 Tootsie Rolls in a row, and you've helped your neighbors.
Is that what's happening? Are there power eaters just eating 100 and making up for people like me that have not had a Tootsie Roll since the first Reagan administration?
In addition to the 64 million Tootsie Rolls they make a day, they also make 20 million Tootsie Pops.
Wait, the rolls are 3 times as popular as the Pops.
Well, the Pops take quite a bit longer, as we'll see, to get to the center of.
Wow, how many?
Right.
Hold on a second. So let's say I'm interested in the how much of the first batch might still be there.
Okay.
It's because it's like homeopathy, right?
Right. It's just a very, very
you
scant
keep diluting
Uh-huh.
the in the case of homeopathy, the St. John's wort or whatever, the deadly mandrake.
Well, it's why Tootsie Rolls are so much more effective now than they were before, because using the logic of homeopathy, your body is activated. Your healing mechanisms are activated.
As we all know from Frozen 2, water has memory, and so do Tootsie Rolls. That means this Tootsie Roll I'm holding here has the vibrational memory of the very first Tootsie Roll.
So Leo Hirschfield's suicide is still present in every Tootsie Roll.
He didn't fall in the vat, John. So let's say it's been 100 years, and let's say there's about every day, you say. So let's say every day there's 200 Tootsie Roll making days a year. Why not?
Okay,
you
let's
think it's
call
more?
it that. 200 Tootsie.
You want to say 300?
No, I say let's. Oh well, I don't think they ever shut that production line down.
Do they repurpose the factory for Neckos?
Let's say
a third of the year.
But we have to account for the fact that they haven't been making 60 million Tootsie Rolls a day the entire time.
I don't think we have to worry about the daily output. We just have to worry about the batch.
I see. Okay.
So every day, part of the batch goes into tomorrow's Uber batch, which will make millions of Tootsie Rolls.
So let's say it's 300 Tootsie Roll producing days a year.
Oh, yeah. No, but you're right. You have to take into account that it has reproduced.
Right.
Like at first, they were making a batch a day, and now that's getting sliced up so much. Because I was just going to, if the output is the same, then it's very easy. It's split 30,000.
Let's do it as though the output were the same.
So
how would the math work?
Every day you're putting in.
We don't know what percentage doesn't get used of the previous day's production.
What do you want to say? It's 10%?
No, it's got to be less than that. They have to have this process pretty well refined.
So what do you think it is? It's like
1%.
It's every day you think they put in 1%.
1% from yesterday's.
So what you do is you just take 0.01 and you raise it to the power of, in this case, it would be, we're going to get letters if I do this wrong. And I'm probably
futurelings from the future that are sentient math are going to be super mad.
But it means the first day you have 100th, but the next day you only would have 1/10,000th, right?
1/10,000th.
So you're raising 0.01 just in 1 year. You're raising it to the 300th power.
That's a small number.
It's going to be less than the diameter of an atom long before you get to modern days.
Right. But it's still there. And it still reverberates in every Tootsie Roll.
But it's just Leo's memory or his love for Clara. It's something you can't see in an electron microscope for sure.
It's the feeling of lower Manhattan before urban renewal.
It's the sound of a trolley car.
That's right.
And children rolling hoops on sticks.
Yeah.
And the disappointed sound of somebody getting a Tootsie Roll because they couldn't afford a licorice twist.
Just picture Don Corleone in sequestered in Ellis Island because he has tuberculosis.
No, it's a little later when everything's going well and he's a respected guy walking down the street.
When he kills Don Fanucci.
Yeah, imagine Don Fanucci. This is a Don Fanucci era candy store.
So the Tootsie Pop is an immediate success in 1931 when it's introduced.
Because it's the Depression and things are bad.
Yeah, and it wasn't enough to keep the Sweets Company of America from being purchased by the paper box company of Joseph Rubin and Sons, but the Tootsie Pop arrives on the scene pretty well, pretty fully formed as an idea. And the wrapper, as you can tell from the illustrations, the wrapper is communicating 1930s childhood adventures, right?
Do you think the original one had the similar art, or do you think there's older versions? Is this just fake nostalgia?
Well, as far as I know, and as far as my extensive research has revealed, the Tootsie Pop wrapper is an artifact of the time, because the legend of the Tootsie Pop Indian, the little boy shooting his arrow at a star, it starts appearing in the records pretty early. Now, what
is the legend?
Well,
for those in the future who are not aware,
you tell me what you knew as a kid about the Tootsie Pop Indian.
I know of the urban legend you're talking about, and I never heard it as a kid.
Oh, because you were overseas.
I don't know. We had access to American commissary candy, but maybe there was less schoolyard chatter about American consumer goods because most of my friends would have had less access.
So this is a.
I know stories you don't know about Korean candies, about Oreo and Choco Pie and squid flavored crackers.
This is an urban legend that exists in my heart and soul from a time before I can recall ever having. It's not a thing that I remember learning.
It's your first memory,
and it was a thing that was traded amongst kids, sort of like sex information is traded amongst junior high students.
Before you're old enough to know anything good to trade, you talk about lollipops.
And the idea is, or rather the conviction was among kids, that if you unwrapped a Tootsie Pop and scanned all these different images of kids playing hoop games and racing boxcars or hopping boxcars, if you found the image of the little boy dressed as an Indian shooting his bow and arrow at a star, or rather shooting an arrow, you don't shoot the bow.
You shoot the arrow with the bow. Shooting
an arrow at a star. If you found that, then the wrapper became an instrument of exchange. You could take that wrapper to a store, hand it in to the shopkeeper, and get another Tootsie Roll for free.
And because of the rotating cast on the wrapper, not every wrapper has the boy dressed as an Indian.
Right. The graphic, the collection of graphic images on the wrapper is large enough that as they produce wrappers for Tootsie Rolls, the images aren't the same on every wrapper. It's cut along the way.
Where it got sliced.
It's a little bit of William Morris wallpaper. That it is a repetition. It is an Escher drawing, but it repeats.
It's a Scooby-Doo background.
That's right. And so but it's not so large that finding a Tootsie Pop Indian is that rare of an occurrence. It's actually kind of just the right amount of scarcity.
But here's my question: if it really is just a simple matter of where the wrapper gets cut, the Indian would be no more or less rare than the other pictures.
That is exactly true.
Oh, okay. It's not like the Indian appears once for only every 5 or 6 go-arounds.
No, but there are a couple of different things that get added on to it to make it seem more plausibly difficult to exchange this wrapper for a free Tootsie Pop. And the addenda to it are that the Tootsie Pop Indian has to be complete. It can't have its feet cut off or its headdress cut off, or the star missing. It has to be the entire image. And
because a Tootsie Pop wrapper only has, maybe 3 images stacked on each side, then the Indian is going to get cut off, 1 in every 4 times or something.
You often will find a wrapper where the character is there, but in one way or another is slightly incomplete.
Okay.
And then the second aspect is that the Tootsie Pop wrapper has circles on it, rings that are, again, part of the image that sort of, and I think the principle is that the ring that's in the center, as it runs down, is sort of meant to be centered over the top of the pop. So it gives the Tootsie Pop a little bit of a graphical. When it's wrapped, it has a little ring.
Yes.
That sort of accentuates.
And the
it.
ring says Tootsie Roll Pop, which is annoying because no one calls them Tootsie Roll Pops.
Nobody does.
And then the name of the flavor.
That's right. So it has a repeating graphic Tootsie Roll Pop down the center, and then the figures are arrayed along the sides. So the third complication was that you needed to have a wrapper that had 3 complete rings that weren't cut off, right? So if you had 3 rings and a complete Tootsie Pop Indian with a star, that this was the wrapper that would get you a free Tootsie Pop if you took it back to the store.
Imagine if that's how currency actually worked. Like a government being like, these gold rocks are a little too common. It's got to be a gold rock that is kind of egg-shaped and has a little dark part, but only on the top. You know, you wouldn't. Or what if it was actually paper currency? And you're like, hey, if you find one of these green pieces of paper and the pyramid has an eye on the top, that's worth $1.
In a way, I mean, currency collectors, stamp collectors, right? They are taking the things that are mundane instruments and finding unique things about them. Like if
mistakes.
If your quarter has a mint mark from Denver, it's worth more than that same quarter with a mint mark from Philadelphia.
That's true.
So people are always looking for this. And there's an element of it that echoes Willy Wonka's golden ticket too, that there's enough things have to go right for you as the child that you find one of these that is more rare once you put all these conditions on it, more rare than just, 1 in 4. It starts to become enough of a challenge. And also, how many Tootsie Pops are you going to eat in a day? I mean, even if you're eating 5 a day.
I wonder if Willy Wonka, as a cultural force, amped this up. This idea that you want to find a special surprise as you open your candy. And barring any real Oompa Loompa factory, the Indian and the Star is the best you can get.
Well, what's funny is that the Tootsie Pop and Tootsie Roll Company have done a lot of advertising around the Tootsie Pop as trying to create the kind of cultural cachet around a piece of candy that everyone hopes.
The owl is the campaign I remember.
So the owl came along in 1970, but before the owl, during World War II, and this was, again, the style of the time, there was a character called Captain Tootsie. And Captain Tootsie...
Early queer icon, Captain Tootsie. Thank you for your service, Captain.
Captain Tootsie was a superhero, just in the style of Captain America, who defeated bad guys. Captain Tootsie had a little sidekick who was a little dark-haired kid named Rollo. And then,
does he represent Rollos, the candy? Were Rollos also made by the same outfit?
Well, he's Tootsie Roll.
Oh.
Rollos came later, right?
Oh.
You couldn't roll a Rollo to your friend at that time.
Is it Rollo with 2 L's?
Rollo with 2 L's.
Oh, okay, never mind.
And then Rollo had 3 friends. And I think you're gonna like his 3 friends.
I don't like the expanded Tootsie cinematic universe. This is too many to remember.
Rollo's 3 friends. There was a little redheaded boy named Fatso.
Wow.
And then there was a blonde boy named Fisty. And then a little blonde girl named Sweetie. Her name probably should have been
poor
Tootsie.
Sweetie, yeah.
Little Sweetie. Captain Tootsie fought bad guys, and throughout the war was a popular.
Did he fight Nazis?
I haven't found any record that Captain Tootsie directly fought Nazis.
Fist the Nazis with Tootsie Pops.
Go Fisty! I don't think today we would name a character Fisty
or Fatso. Even Sweeties, I'm finding a little bit problematic.
Well, and the fact
it's
that
clearly the best of the 3.
The fact that Fatso also had red hair, boy, that's really that's like 3 strikes, right?
I mean, redheaded people have it hard enough.
They make Junior Mints.
Oh,
they
really?
make Bit of Honeys. Like they make a lot of different stuff. But there's 60 million Tootsie Rolls a day kind of define them. And in 66, they changed their name to Tootsie Roll Industries.
Angering Bit of Honey fans.
And it was not, well, how many of those are there? In 1970, they came out with their iconic commercial starring the owl, the little boy who walks around. And the original commercial is kind of, you don't see it very much, although I remember it from the time.
It's animated, right?
It's a little cartoon. And a little boy goes to a variety of barnyard animals. A cow.
Mr. Cow,
Yes?
how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
I don't know. I always end up biting.
And a turtle.
Mr. Turtle, how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
I never made it without biting.
I mean, a turtle's not a barnyard animal, I guess. But he goes to several animals and says, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? And the different animals are like, I don't know. I can't be bothered.
It's a little red hen scenario.
Yeah,
a series of unhelpful animals.
I just bite into it. Why don't you go ask the turtle? And the turtle's like, I just bite into it. And eventually the little boy is directed to the owl, a very smart owl wearing a like a scholar's hat.
Mr. Owl, how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
A good question. Let's find out. 1, 2, 3.
If there's anything I can't stand, it's a smart owl.
Now, the naked commercialism behind this. I mean, this and I guess you could weaponize the Indian and the star myth in the same way, but really they're just trying to get people to eat Tootsie Pops faster. I don't find it irresistible to bite into a Tootsie Pop. I'm quite happy looking at a Tootsie Pop. I'm a 2 marshmallow child.
Well, this really resonated with the world of the time. It resonated with me. I don't know if you remember, in the mid-'70s, they also had a theme song for Tootsie Rolls.
No.
That went...
Can you hum it for me?
Whatever it is, I think I see.
Becomes a Tootsie Roll
Comes a Tootsie Roll to me. Something like that.
Have you ever covered that on stage?
No, although I think probably there are 1,000 indie rockers that have.
Well, just learn the chords.
And that also kind of got ingrained in my head. Whatever it is I think I see becomes a Tootsie Roll to me. And their cartoon was like,
it's horrifying.
Some kid looks at a hippopotamus and it becomes a Tootsie Roll, and a kid looks at a blimp and it becomes a Tootsie Roll. It's just like you and your 25-pound Tootsie Roll.
That would be a crippling psychic. I mean, imagine the therapy that would go through. Like, you wouldn't be able. There's nothing in life you could cope with. That guy couldn't hold down a job. Yeah, imagine him trying to love his wife, who turns into a Tootsie Roll. It's King Midas. But
this is a problem afflicting children. Hopefully, I mean, no adults appear in this ad.
They're just trying to get kids to eat more Tootsie Pops by crunching into them faster. You know, because the problem with the Tootsie Roll is you can eat one for 45 minutes. Some guy at a desk somewhere, some evil Don Draper type, is like, how do we get kids to eat 3 Tootsie Pops an hour instead of 1? If they just chewed them faster.
Well, or if we made this sport, the sport of trying to figure out how to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop.
Oh, would you literally count to see?
Yeah, well, this is what happened, right? And the Tootsie Roll company has never taken advantage of the urban legend where a Tootsie wrapper actually won you a free Tootsie Roll.
They've never redeemed.
They never have.
Their website, I looked up on their website, they have a thing saying, sorry, it's just a fun legend, but they're delicious.
Now, there are tons and tons of examples of little country stores, including, I've heard from people, the one on Vashon Island here would redeem the Tootsie Pop Indian with the star and the 3 rings for
funny.
Tootsie Pop.
Poppy Meyer runs to that store like when she's out there.
Yeah, it's a great little store.
Maybe she's too old for candy stores now, but she used to just run over there and chit chat with the folks.
I think there are plenty of shopkeepers that tried to do it, but maybe they didn't add the 3 rings condition or something, and they
went broke.
They realized that they can't keep giving away Tootsie Pops because there's 1 in 4.
All those places are out of business now.
Although I think most kids like me were excited to get a wrapper that met these conditions, would fold it up and keep it, but never actually tried to go into a store to redeem it. And I think
then you'd lose your souvenir.
Well, it also falls into the Santa Claus category where as a kid, you don't want to find out that this isn't true. You would rather believe that this was worth something than go to a store and have the person, have whoever it is that's at the 7-Eleven go, what? No, get out of here.
It's why I don't look at my kids' browser histories. I just want.
That seems unsafe.
I just don't want to know.
But the Tootsie Pop company recognized that they needed, the Tootsie Roll company recognized that they needed to address this issue because they kind of had a monster on their hands, and there is a lot of fan interaction, customer interaction with the Tootsie Roll company. They have received over 20,000 letters from kids, both inquiring about whether or not their wrapper is worth a free Tootsie Pop, and also reporting on their personal experiences personal experiments on how many licks it takes to get to the center of it.
So the effect of the ad has actually been to make people eat Tootsie Pops slower because they're essentially doing Tootsie Pop edging. They're just trying to lick as long as they can.
Well, I feel like at least in my experience, if you get to the center of a Tootsie Pop really quickly, it's not like you reach into your holster and grab a second Tootsie Pop, right? I mean, a Tootsie Pop is a thing that either lasts as long as it lasts.
It's one a day,
right? You don't sit and the faster you eat them, they're not like potato chips.
And you can keep licking in the same place to get to the core, right? You're not trying to lick away all of the grape. You're just trying to tunnel through.
Well, so there are two different theories.
Are there two different events?
There are two different methods. There have been a surprising number of experiments devoted to figuring out the actual number of licks it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop. Again, kids have written in the thousands. Generally, kids the range of variation for how many licks it takes any group of kids to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop ranges between about 100 licks and 5,800 licks.
I'm very skeptical of 100.
Well, I think you're right to be skeptical. The average of child-reported experimentation is 600 licks, but that is based on the even licking method of getting to the center. Of
trying to get rid of the whole thing.
Yeah, which is licking around the pop and trying to arrive at the center uniformly from all sides.
It would also be length of lick. I mean, if you're just kind of lapping at it like a cat drinking milk, that's one thing. But if you're allowed to actually draw your tongue around the whole thing in some erotic Sherilyn Fenn fashion, that was a great reference. Like that would
put me right back.
That would be a little different, right? That would be fewer licks.
So this should give us pause, because as people who are pretty soon going to be paying the college tuitions of our children, no fewer than at least 4 different universities have dedicated resources and time to
peer-reviewed journals
building machines, licking machines to test this. The University of, or rather Purdue University, invented a machine a licking machine that got to the center of a Tootsie Pop in 364 licks. But during this process of building and testing this machine,
imagine the fake tongue. It's got to be calibrated to have about the friction and the moisture
of a
and
real
softness
tongue.
Of a human tongue.
Picture what the students at Purdue came up with.
Picture a fake tongue licking a Tootsie Pop on a human face forever.
But kind of like you and Brad Rutter competing against Watson. They also had 20 volunteer students compete against their licking machine.
That's the grossest John Henry contest ever.
And their volunteers averaged about 252 licks to get to the center of the Tootsie Pop.
Human race.
That's right. The humans beat the machine. University of Michigan also came up with a machine that took 411 licks to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop. The University of Cambridge came in way off the bubble here.
I'm very disappointed this is spread across the Atlantic.
Almost 3,500 licks, according to their machine. So
that's why the British Empire is dying.
If you're going to buy a machine, that's not the machine.
You didn't even have to look at the Brexit vote. You could look at those results and see what's going on there.
University of Florida built a machine. There are a lot of different attempts to mechanize this contest.
And what a sad. I mean, that's kind of a sad trend thing. You know, universities and scholars pouring resources into this because they know it'll be one of these pop science headlines.
Yeah, it's part of the whimsicalification of science as a way of trying to make it appealing to kids.
Yeah, I guess that's the upside. Yeah. It's like science can solve problems. You understand Jimmy and Susie and Tootsie.
That's right.
And Fatso and Fisty.
The Tootsie Pop Company loves this stuff, and they have the Tootsie Pop Squad comic, which is just the absolute worst sort of like, let's go, kids, and bring your Tootsie Pops while we solve a mystery.
Every time I see these comics, I always think these are horribly drawn.
Yeah.
And the page rates for superhero comics are not super high. Like, you could get somebody to do this that would look like a plausible Iron Man comic, right? Paying them $150 a page, and yet...
Yeah,
these things always look terrible.
It's not as good as South Park, right? They also have Mr. Owl's Treehouse Club, which I think it was the original, and that spawned the Tootsie Pop Squad. But the Tootsie Roll Company replies to kids. Any kid that writes in, either writes in asking whether or not their wrapper is redeemable, or writes in with a suggestion about how many licks it takes.
Like any kid self-reporting a number.
Gets a personal reply. And kids that report how that they have done this test, they get a certificate that makes them members of the Clean Stick Club. They get a Clean Stick Award, which again, I don't think I would.
Is that still what we're calling it in 2019?
I don't think I would give a kid a Clean Stick Award.
I want my kids to be in the Clean Stick Club.
But what it says on the Clean Stick Award is that Tootsie Roll declares that you are one who knows. They don't confirm the kid's findings.
It just says one who knows?
You are one who knows.
That's a very mystical turn of phrase.
Right?
It really does seem like they have Gnostic knowledge now, right?
You are one who knows. But in response to the legend of the Indian rapper, they recognized that they needed to do something. And so they wrote in the 1980s, they wrote an actual legend where the inventor of the Tootsie Pop was trying desperately to achieve this previously unachievable feat, which was to make a popsicle that had a chewy center. And this inventor, in his workshop,
late one night,
believed that, or was trying to make the popsicle star-shaped for some reason. He thought that's how to do it. He thought if he could just make a star-shaped pop with a chewy center, he would have achieved greatness.
People are getting angry that you're calling lollipops popsicles.
I'm sorry, lollipop. A star-shaped lollipop.
Why would that make it easier?
Center.
That would be much harder.
That's just what he was trying to do.
Much harder.
In the night, an apparition appeared of a great Indian chief. And the Indian chief silently took out his bow and arrow and aimed it out the window at a star and shot his magical arrow at the star, at which point the star turned into a moon. And the inventor realized that the Indian chief, who in this case was a Native American chief.
Not a kid in a costume.
Not a kid in a costume, but a real Native American.
An actual spirit who is somehow wandering the astral plane, inspiring white candy inventors. The great chief recognized that this candy inventor needed a little push from beyond. And in seeing this vision, then when the candy maker awoke, he realized that what the great chief was telling him was not to make a star-shaped lollipop, but to make it shaped like a moon. Instead, to make a round lollipop, if you can imagine.
A round lollipop with a chewy center. And that solved the problem. And the candy maker went on to make Tootsie Pops, which then changed the world.
This is still what Sweets & Co. is telling kids today.
They send it to kids.
They tell kids that there's an Indian ghost.
An Indian ghost.
And even after all we did to their people, they are kind enough in the next world to come back and inspire modern entrepreneurs.
Well, and I'm guessing that this was Brandon Perry that had this mystical experience. Sitting in his 1931, Hoovertown, and so the great chief, unnamed, probably not Satiacum or
any name that they would have given it would have been terrible, and I don't want to know. It'll be heap big candy knowledge or whatever, and it'll be racist.
So this was the Tootsie Pops, the Tootsie Pop Company's solution to this problem was to say to kids, look. We're not going to give you a free pop, but we are going to give you a strange, mystical, insane, origin story involving a 1980s version of what would be an acceptable intrusion of Native American culture into our dream lives.
And that concludes the Tootsie Pop Indian. Entry 1317.LA0312, certificate number 33486 in the omnibus. Now, futurelings, we have no assumption that social media will exist in your era. Hopefully weird, racist corporate mythology has gone as well. But if you have either of those, you can find our non-racist tweets and posts at Omnibus Project, at John Roderick, and at Ken Jennings on variously Twitter, Instagram, whatever. We don't have much of a Facebook presence except for our beloved futurelings, who are probably annoyed at this very moment that I said the G in Gnostic as if it were actually pronounced that way, because they don't know that I was doing a bit. You could send us email at the time at our address, theomnibusproject@gmail.com. Send us your fun reactions, send us your submissions, send us your anger that we did not call the character the Tootsie Pop Native American. If you want to send us physical artifacts or, threats or bombs, you can send those all to us at the Omnibus Project, P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington, 98155. They'll be delivered to us in one of those mail trucks, so beloved of many of our contemporary listeners. Another thing you could contribute is to the financial stability of the show. If you would like to show your generosity and your appreciation for anything you learned here today about corporate racism, you can become a supporter of the Omnibus and receive our fine addenda monthly episodes at patreon.com/omnibusproject.
Futurelings, an interesting thing about the Tootsie Roll company, Tootsie Roll Industries, is that it is still headed by
Brandon Perry.
By Ellen Reuben Gordon, the daughter of one of the sons of Joseph Reuben and Sons. Ellen Reuben Gordon is now
it's still a family business
in her late 80s or early 90s. As recently as 2015, she and her family were listed as the 193rd wealthiest family in America with $1.2 billion wealth.
Are the 192 ahead of her people who invented 192 kinds of candy that are better than Tootsie Rolls?
What's amazing to me is that there are 200 families in America worth over $1 billion.
And the fact is, you can get there with a century of Tootsie Rolls.
Yeah. She and her husband ran the Tootsie Roll Industries. He died in 2015. She is almost 90 now. She and her family own 60% of the company, and she is the CEO and president, just like out there rocking.
Think about a candy that's better than Tootsie Rolls. Think about a whatchamacallit bar, if those are still sold. No,
I don't know if a whatchamacallit's better than a Tootsie Roll, but certainly a Hershey bar with almonds is.
Yeah, but nobody's a billionaire for inventing those. Once again, capitalism has rewarded the wrong people.
You and I are going to disagree on whether or not the Tootsie Roll family should be worth $1 billion. I think they should.
Well, I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm just
Pop.
saying, but if they are, why is the whatchamacallit guy not a billionaire?
He may be. We haven't done a deep dive on the whatchamacallit
Should we get to the
inventor.
whatchamacallit billionaire?
Futurelings, from our vantage point in your distant past, when we were still eating old people candy and dreaming of Native American mystics, we have no idea how long our civilization survived. We hope and pray that the catastrophe we fear may never come. Although I'm confident, even if you are sentient math, that Tootsie Rolls, which do not appear to expire, they do get kind of chewier as time goes on.
Are there stories of people finding some 1920s Tootsie Roll and Dad's old World War I stuff?
Well, I don't need a story because I find old Tootsie Roll Pops in my own stuff all the time. And I'm like, how long has this been here? I haven't opened this box in 20 years.
Listeners, every time you find a Tootsie Roll, you need to date it, put a date on it, and just leave it in the back of a junk drawer and then see what happens.
See what happens. Years. Try it in 50 years. If the worst comes soon, this recording, like all our recordings, may have been our final word. But if Providence allows, we hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.